You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin.
You mean shiny.
Shh! Wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him, that's Cujo, that's Cujo.
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for a ridiculous amount of bonus content that I keep spewing onto the Patreon feed that's spread across all of obsessiveviewer.com's various podcasts. And on that note, so we have different tiers. I'm not going to go through all of them and everything, but I will say that if you go to obsessiveviewer.com and you hover over the Patreon link on the top row, the top menu, you can go to the different reward tiers and see what content is on each reward tier. So, yeah, and it's a cascade effect. So if you pledge $10, you get access to everything. If you pledge $5, you get access to everything on the $5 and below tiers. $2, you get the $2 tier and $1 tier. And $1 tier, you get $1 tier stuff. So check that out. Basically, if you want to go to the corresponding tier, just go obsessiveviewer.com/Patreon1 or Patreon2 or Patreon 5, so on and so forth.
Cool.
Okay, so anyway, that's the pitch for Patreon. And I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt. And joining me today, as usual, is someone that I personally would trust with sacred family treasures, but wouldn't want to be trapped on a raft, hunted by a demonic oil patch. It's Tiny.
Hello.
How is it going, Tiny?
It's going pretty good. How are you, buddy?
Nice. Pretty good. Had a little health scare with the little kitty.
Yeah, little kitty.
Which is detailed in horrific detail and
harrowing detail,
dramatic detail. Yes, on Patreon. So patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And yeah, could you do? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see what fell over.
Oh yeah, just a cereal box. We have cereal boxes on the table to keep pizza from jumping onto the podcasting table, and and I don't think that would affect the sound or anything. Except for when it falls over. So anyway, so that I'm glad you're doing well, Tiny.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, thank you.
And pizza's all better.
Yes, and pizza is all better. For everyone that's wondering from social media and everything, still do the candlelight vigils because I think pizza really likes the attention. But I am here to say that she is doing fine. Yes. So today on the podcast, Tiny, we are continuing our series of episodes covering all or most things Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and in the second installment of our 6-episode series, we're covering 1987's Creepshow sequel titled Creepshow 2, directed by Michael Gornick and written by George A. Romero with stories by Stephen King. So this is an interesting one, and we'll do news and check-ins here in a second, but it's interesting because this episode, or this is kind of a looser fit than we usually do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of I don't know. I feel like I'm prefacing the review for that for a specific reason, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's it'll be interesting. But before we get into our discussion of Creepshow 2, Tiny, we've got some Stephen King news and check-ins.
Yep.
I will start with some news. So going back to last week's episode, which this is kind of a fun behind the scenes thing, we are recording this the day that the previous episode was released. So I just like that we're this far ahead. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
And also this month, September, is this month. I don't want to say how recent it is or how frequent it is that we do this, but in terms of Obsessive Viewer podcast and Tower Junkies podcast, Anthology's still kind of on hiatus, but in terms of Obsessive Viewer and Tower Junkies, we had in September episodes each week for those two podcasts. So I'm very proud of that.
Sweet.
Yeah. So, okay. So the first piece of Stephen King news that I have is that the Red Screen short story Humble Bundle exclusive for charity to benefit the ACLU sale has ended. And I just wanted to just, kind of give the figures and everything.
Yeah.
So the bundle was live from September 9th, 2021 to September 23rd, 2021, which, if you're not aware, basically Humble Bundle hosted this sale for an exclusive Stephen King short story called Red Screen. And basically you could pay what you want and all of the money would benefit or goes to benefit the ACLU. And we talked about it in a previous episode, the short story, and as well, I posted a review of it on Patreon, and that Patreon recording is actually free to everyone. So if you go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, you might have to click a tab that says free Patreon, and then you'll get access to that recording. So without paying anything. So yeah. Anyway, so the bundle was live, like it was on sale September 9th to September 23rd. I'll just tell you the figures. A total of 19,264 copies were sold. It was a digital ebook.
19.
Yes. Oh my God. I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. And the amount raised was $149,852.15.
Damn.
So that is just so awesome.
Yeah.
So good job, Stephen King fans. Ourselves included, or myself included.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's exciting. I was very, very, very proud of the Stephen King fan community. So yeah, really, I think that might be all the news that I have.
Okay.
Yeah, because I kind of want to really get to this episode. But as far as check-ins are concerned, do you have any, Tiny?
I do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Kinda. I mean, I do.
Okay.
I do.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just not that cool.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and hit me with your check-in?
Okay, well, I listened to the latest episode of Kingcast.
Okay, nice.
And it was, it's noteworthy because it was Matt Fraction, the comic book author.
Oh, yes.
He's been involved in all kinds of different franchises.
Oh, yeah, and they talked about the drawing of the three.
They talked about the drawing of the three. So I think it's maybe their longest episode to date.
Wow.
It was like almost 2.5 hours. And it kind of evolved. So Matt Fraction at the moment has only read through Wastelands.
Oh, that's interesting.
He's only read the first 3 books.
Okay.
But he had so much knowledge of the Dark Tower.
Oh, really?
And he's a huge Stephen King fan.
Interesting.
Just referencing so many other properties. And he adores 11/22/63.
Nice.
But the conversation evolved kind of into like a general Dark Tower discussion.
Okay.
And just really got kind of like set me, like kind of gave me the itch. Really wanted to read those books because it's been so long since I've read them and we've been talking about it lately. So I highly recommend that episode because Matt Fraction is a really bright guy and like some of his takes on the general, I don't know, just kind of the general tone and feel of the Dark Tower are really good takes. And he's just got a lot of personal, he's a writer himself, so he's got a lot of experience in that department. And yeah, just again, his depth of knowledge is amazing. Like he read the Dark Tower, years and years and years and years and years ago. And now he's, or he read The Gunslinger, I think. And so now he's I don't know. He's kind of ebbed and flowed out of being a King fan, but like,
Okay.
I don't know. It's kind of interesting in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just blown away by his take on stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, I recommend that for Tower fans.
Very cool.
Dark Tower fans, yeah.
So you're saying that if you want to listen to a podcast involving someone named Matt talk about Stephen King, listen to that episode of Kingcast.
Totally.
But I did want to ask you, Tiny. So since it is, and this might go into a bigger conversation about your listening habits with podcasts and stuff, and we covered that in depth in Patreon.
Yeah.
But definitely earned that $1 a month. But when you listen to that, since it is the longest episode, and I know that you worked a lot today, I assumed you listened to it today. Did you listen to it all in one go, or did you listen to it in fractions?
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Pretty much all in one go.
Okay, yeah, you don't need to answer. It's
Okay.
Joke landed.
Well,
Oh, that's good though. That's good.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and in other Stephen King podcast, Stephen King podcast corners, friend of the show, Kim C, at the Year of Underrated Stephen King, has begun her deep dive into The Green Mile,
Nice.
which makes me really want to listen to The Green Mile.
Yeah, I've never read it either.
Yeah, and she's doing it section by section with the serialized format.
Nice.
So I'm very, I have it downloaded from Audible to listen to, and I will eventually, but I'm still also listening to Under the Dome. And then I also, we're going to need it, like in the next month or so to do Dreamcatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll do that. I mean, I've actually read that and seen the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not great, but I kind of like it actually.
Yeah, I listened to it, I think last year, and it was one of those things where it was like, I was not engaged by it.
Right.
And I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I believe we saw it in the theater together.
I think so. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So neat.
So I'm not like dreading that at all.
Okay. I'll be more upbeat. Yeah, it should be fun, guys.
Totes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally radical.
Donnie Wahlberg.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's in it.
He is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also want to do Colorado Kid and
Joyland.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't read either of those either.
Yes.
So.
Which Kim C is interested in joining us for a discussion on.
Sweet.
So yeah. So we will do those soon. Do you have any other check-ins?
I don't, but I'm reading a book right now, but it's not Stephen King.
Oh, okay.
I'm reading Chaos by Tom O'Neill. It's about I think you've heard of it. It's about like this journalist who was going to do an anniversary article on like the Manson killings, and like just did a deep dive into it and took like 20 years to research it.
Jeez.
And like found out all this crazy shit. And so he wrote this book about the Manson killings and how like it ties into all these other things, and like the CIA got involved. And it's a really, really good. About halfway through it. It's really good so far.
Really?
Yeah, I recommend it. I mean, I never knew much about the Tate LaBianca killings. Like it just never piqued my interest for whatever reason. So it's been really interesting to kind of deep dive into that and get all those details. It's really, really shocking.
That sounds really interesting. I'm looking at it on Audible. My next credit, I'm getting a credit next week. I might use it on that. I highly recommend it. It's really interesting so far. Nice.
And it's told from like a first person, like, so I was interviewing this guy. And yeah, it's it's kind of a fresh take or like a fresh format. Typically the nonfiction I read doesn't have that format. So
okay.
It's kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's cool.
Sweet. On that note, I would recommend checking out Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chismar.
Okay.
Because it is an interesting kind of metafiction kind of thing, but it's basically about he's like the main character, like teenage version of Rich in his small town when murders happen. And so it's very compelling. It's very interesting. And and Richard Chismar is a good dude. He does, he like runs Cemetery Dance publications.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And he wrote, he wrote the Gwendy trilogy with King. Well, he wrote Gwendy's Button Box with King, and then Gwendy's Magic Feather, which is his own novel in that universe. And then in February, they're teaming up again to do Gwendy's Final Task.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's coming out in February, and I'm thinking that maybe we could, since they're all pretty short, maybe we can like read all three and then do like a trilogy episode.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
totally.
We'll see.
But I think after I finish this book, Chaos by Tom O'Neill, I'd like to, maybe I'll do Joyland or Colorado Kid, so we can do that episode with Kim.
Hell yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like Colorado Kid, I think is like 3 hours.
Right. I was going to say they're not very long.
Yeah. So awesome. Yeah. I will have to reach out to her, and if she's not annoyed by us yet,
Nice.
Yeah. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I go into my check-ins?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a few check-ins. One is that, just nerd stuff. I bought a hardcover copy of Mr. Mercedes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and again, I didn't bring it off the shelf to show you, but this is a completionist thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I owned. I don't know what the circumstances were of that, but I think I owned the Kindle version, and then I bought Finders Keepers when it came out in hardcover, and End of Watch when it came out in hardcover, and so I never owned the hardcover of Mr. Mercedes. And so on my shelf, I have like the two second and third books of a trilogy in hardcover.
Yeah.
And the first one isn't to be seen. So I finally bought Mr. Mercedes in hardcover. So I'm excited about that.
Cool.
And also, I have been watching Chapelwaite.
Yeah, you're liking that, right?
I am. And okay, so another pitch for the for the Patreon guys. I'm sorry to be shilling for that, but at the $2 level, I do TV reaction reviews and everything. So I'm currently doing episode by episode reviews of Foundation on Apple TV Plus. Next month, I'm going to do Invasion on Apple TV Plus, and I'm currently doing Chapelwaite. I also did Lisi's story and some other stuff. I actually have on Patreon a tag where if you join Patreon and then click the Stephen King tag, everything that's related to Stephen King will show up. So it's a filter for that.
Okay.
So anyway, Chapelwaite, I am really, really enjoying, and I'm excited because as of this recording, I'm completely caught up. Like there's been 7 episodes that have aired.
Nice.
And so for those who don't know, Chapelwaite is based on the Jerusalem's Lot short story in Night Shift, which is a prequel of sorts to Salem's Lot. It's about a man who inherits a man in 1850 who inherits a mansion in Preacher's Corners, Maine, which is adjacent to Jerusalem's Lot, and some crazy stuff happens. So
cool.
So the show stars Adrian Brody. I know I mentioned it last week because one of the news items was that the showrunners of that show were talking about how they wanted to do Sometimes They Come Back. Anyway, this show is really interesting because it is such a gothic horror kind of aesthetic, and it is so extreme in a manageable way with the body horror. And what I love about it is that the story doesn't really have much connection to Salem's Lot in structure or content or anything. But what the show is doing is it's improving upon the story in that it's expanding the story. So like in the short story, it's just the man at the mansion, but in the show, he has 3 children who they recently lost their mother. So like like at the start of it, his wife passed away. And so they're all grieving and everything. So there's some interesting elements there, but there's this mystery element, this horror element that is more directly linked to Salem's Lot, I guess. I hope that's not too spoilery, but it's just so interesting to me how they are melding Jerusalem's Lot, the short story, with the Salem's Lot pop culture thing, like the thing that's very famous about Salem's Lot. So it's an interesting thing. It's not to the level of like Mike Flanagan just blowing everyone away with Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
But it is very strong in and of itself. So
cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really liking it. And you can listen to me talk about it, each episode on Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer.
Cool.
Yes, I just dropped my phone.
Oh, don't do that.
Okay. So, I don't think I really have any other check-ins.
Okay.
Except that, one of my friends from the IFJA, tweeted today that, it was, where was it? Oh, it might have been on my other. No, it wasn't. Was it? Yeah, it was. He tweeted at me that, he said, "You guys got to cover Creepshow 3."
Oh shit!
And we're not. There's no plans to cover Creepshow 3.
Okay.
We're going to do Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, instead of Creepshow 3 for this review series.
Okay. For
reasons that will become apparent later, or if you already know the history, you know. So I think that is all the check-ins I have. Shall we go into our review of Creepshow 2?
Yes.
All right, cool. So I'm going to actually play a clip from the trailer at the start of this, because I actually got 2 clips from the trailer for it. So here is our intro into this should have been seamless, but here's our intro into the review for Creepshow 2.
They gotta make me a movie star. But if you only make it to one scary film all year, make it one you'll remember all year long. Creepshow 2. If you like movies that will keep you stuck to your chair. Stephen King and George Romero have conjured up an all-new Creepshow.
No! That's impossible!
Just for you.
All right, so Creepshow 2 was released on May 1st, 1987. And the IMDb plot summary is 3 more bone-chilling tales that include a vengeful wooden Native American, a monstrous blob in a lake, and a hitchhiker who wants revenge and will not die. The movie was directed by Michael Gornick and written by George Romero with stories by Stephen King. And a couple of one little piece of trivia about this movie is that it was originally intended to have 5 segments like the previous one. But for budgetary reasons, two of them were scrapped. And one, I don't know anything about one of them. It's called Pinfall. I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
But the other one was Cat from Hell, which is based on the short story that King wrote in 1977, but wasn't collected until just after sunset in like 2006. And that short story was later adapted for Tales from the Dark Side, the movie.
Okay.
So I'm very curious to see how that turned out.
Cool.
Because it's an interesting story. So, Tiny, as we established last week, you have seen Creepshow, had seen Creepshow, and this viewing of Creepshow that we did for this podcast specifically reinvigorated your love for Creepshow.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, and mine too. It is probably going to be a staple. It's so fun, cheesy, fun, campy fun. So, Creepshow 2, Tiny.
Yeah.
This movie is considerably shorter. I think it clocks in at about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it has 3 segments. Overall thoughts, how did you feel about Creepshow 2? Kind of in broad terms, and then we can go segment by segment and then do a spoiler section.
Man, I feel like it is such a huge shift in tone. And as you mentioned and I mentioned in the first episode, the tone kind of makes the first movie. That we talked about all the campiness and the over-the-top cheesiness, fun stuff, tongue-in-cheek, like blatant comedy in some of the segments in the first one. That fun is like almost entirely missing from the second movie.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's multiple reasons why, but this one felt so quick and so rushed, and it didn't seem to weave from segment to segment fluidly like the first movie did.
Right.
And the frame story was nowhere near as satisfying.
Yeah.
And the comic book feel was missing. I don't know about missing, but it was much less emphasized than the first movie.
Yeah, instead of the comic book imagery and everything, it's like they decided not to go with that, which in and of itself is a mistake, just out and out mistake, because that was so essential to the feel and the tone of the first movie. But what they do instead is this like 2D animation thing.
Yeah.
That I think it kind of works, or it would work. It would heighten the tone of a better collection of stories, I would say. But having the knowledge and having the memory of a comic book feel in the previous movie, and to go to this, which is like a kind of a twisted, like Disney animated thing in 2D animation, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it was just such a downer.
It felt hollow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it also felt directionless. Like, it felt like, because that first movie has the frame story with Joe Hill, young Joe Hill, and his father screaming at him and everything.
Yeah.
And like that frame story is good, but like this one is like a kid getting his copy of Creepshow right off the truck, and I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like we had the creep in makeup, which that was Tom Savini.
Right.
Which that was cool, but it didn't work for me.
Yeah. And it weaves in this the frame story in the end kind of weaves in this whole bully aspect.
And honestly, I completely forgot about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like I think that's in keeping with the tone of Creepshow, but it didn't feel earned because it just kind of came out of nowhere towards the end.
Yeah, because the bullies aren't even established until like halfway through the movie, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he the killer plant thing was cool, and I liked that.
Yeah, sure.
But again, it didn't that was some fun come up, and it's kind of like the voodoo doll at the end of the first one was so fun, and I think it felt pretty similar in this one with the killer plants, but it wasn't as earned because we weren't as invested in it.
Yeah,
but
I think that would have made for a more interesting other segment of the movie, and that also probably would have been interesting because it would have been kind of in keeping with the previous movie, like kind of a spiritual successor to the lonesome death of Jordy Verrill.
Right. Visually it's so different too, because again the like the transition and the wipes that we talked about in the first movie, where the whole had that comic book feel and were just presented and through that lens of a comic book. This did not have that,
not at all.
I mean it had it, but it didn't feel it didn't feel genuine. It felt out of place. It wasn't natural like it was in the first movie.
It felt very just tacked on.
Yeah.
And just right.
Yeah.
That was such a bummer. And what sucks is that's the framing narrative. That's the frame story. That's the thing that we keep coming back to in between each segment. And like that needs to be something, compelling or interesting.
Yeah.
And
I think it was hurt by the fact that there's only 3 segments, and so there's not as much of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think more of it would have saved it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the movie as a whole was just kind of a complete mess.
Right. I don't know if it's because Romero wasn't involved.
Yeah, well, he wrote it, but he didn't direct it.
He didn't direct it, yeah.
And I don't know, because I believe, I want to say that the director came from Tales from the Dark Side, the show. And so that makes me a little curious about Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, which we haven't watched yet, but we're covering it next week. So I don't know. It's just, it's something that I really, I just feel like that. Okay, he did not direct Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, so there's that. But I know that he did direct episodes of Tales from the Dark Side, the show. But anyway, I don't know if that is a problem with the writing or the directing or a mix of both, because, and we can go into the first segment here in a second, but I felt like the pacing for a 90-minute movie, this movie did nothing for me in terms of pacing. I did not have, like, on one hand, yes, I did not have that, like, edge of my seat, fun environment, atmosphere, fun experience that I had with Creepshow 1. But I also did not have I did not feel an intensity with it.
Yeah.
Like, I started this movie one night and I got about 5 minutes into it and I was like, it was like that scene in The Simpsons where they're watching Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie and they see the sign that says Fireworks Factory up ahead, and Milhouse says,
When are they gonna get to the fireworks factory?
That's how I felt throughout, like, the first segment of this movie. Like, when are they going to get to the horror stuff? When are they going to get to the like wooden Indian stuff?
I agree.
Yeah, it just felt so, and like that's the lead off story.
Yeah,
it's just,
it was a slog.
Yeah,
like there's all this, the financial problems, the store owner. I don't care.
We didn't need half of the stuff.
Didn't need that character development at all. Yeah.
And, like, do you want to get into talking about that? By the way, I'll introduce that segment.
Yeah.
It's the segment is called Old Chief Woodenhead. It's an original story that was written for the film. And that's all the intro I have. I will say that George Kennedy is the star of it. And I had recently seen him in an episode of Wings from, like, the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because he was playing himself, who he was in the airport movies, I think. Anyway, so... yeah, this segment, man, I there's like 3 different things that are happening before any supernatural or horror stuff happens.
Right.
And that's like, the town it's kind of turning into a ghost town. The proprietor of this like antique store or whatever, or general store, is struggling on hard times, or he is helping out. He has a good heart that he's helping out with Native Americans who have, like, are in debt to him for whatever reason, and can't pay. Like the head of one of the tribes comes and gives him like some sacred jewelry or something that I guess is collateral for a debt that he has.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just weird because, like I think, like, okay, this is an anthology horror movie. This is going to have some special property. This is going to be like the Twilight Zone element of the episode. And it's not. It's like, it has some bearing in the plot later, but it's more like it's just a secondary thing. It's an afterthought.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
That's where the segment should have started, is that the head of the Native American tribe coming in to give him the jewelry. Yeah. And I think that's a good end. That's we did not need anything before that.
No, we really didn't.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's
If the story that they were telling, the Old Chief Woodenhead story, if that was the only segment and this wasn't an anthology movie and this was like, that's the whole movie, then yeah, spend some time building up the atmosphere, building up the backstory and everything. But it's short fiction. It's an anthology film. Like, get to the fun stuff, get to the horror stuff.
Yep.
And then things progress where we won't spoil it yet, but there's a robbery, and the stuff that is even in the title of the story does not happen until like 3 minutes until the end of that segment.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, you know, I like the idea a lot of this story, and the fun stuff that you keep talking about. I thought it was really fun and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But it's so quick, and it's such a small, like you're saying, such a small part of the segment.
Yeah.
It feels like such an oversight. Like, so much of the story was fluff.
And it's in such contrast to the tone of the actual story of it. Like the robbery. Like that is some like heavy stuff.
Right.
And that is like that's some kind of dark stuff. And the absence of of comedy to that. Like, this could have been like a dark comedy and everything, but they didn't have any comedy there.
Right.
And so when we have like this super intense or kind of silly in terms of like it was in the trailer, how one of the robbers wants to go to Hollywood and be an actor because he has long hair. It's like, okay, fucking shut up. Just stop.
I thought it was fun over the top. I kind of liked it.
Sure.
Holt McCallamy, I'm a fan of him as an actor.
Okay. I don't know if I've seen him in anything.
You've seen him before. He's a character actor. He was in Fight Club.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's in that. Oh gosh, it's been off the air, or it's been on hiatus for a while. The serial killer show on Netflix.
Mindhunter?
Mindhunter.
Oh, okay.
He's on that. Yeah, he's really good in that. But yeah, I don't know if he has any Native American heritage, but he seems pretty white. I'm sure there's some controversy there, but yeah, he's kind of over the top and ridiculous, and so I sort of liked what they did with his character.
Sure.
But again, it took way too long to get there.
Absolutely. And it was just, it was not good. It was just not good. And like I said, that whole thing, the contrast of it, because the big finale of it is just, it's silly, it's crazy, it's something that I was into, or I would have been into if that was the tone of the whole segment. But it wasn't, and it just felt
right.
I don't know. It just it was frustrating.
Yeah. But ultimately, the wooden chief coming to life and killing the guy, that was fun as shit.
That's what I'm talking
that.
about.
Yeah,
that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, that's the fun.
But
stuff,
like the fact that that's 3 minutes of a 25-minute segment.
Exactly. That's the problem.
Is so frustrating.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
Yep.
Yeah. And I have stuff that I'll talk about in spoilers with that just briefly, but
okay.
Any other thoughts on that segment?
Not really, no.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. It wasn't to my liking, and it just sucks that that's the lead off. That's the opening of it.
Right.
So yeah, Old Chief Woodenhead, not a fan of that segment. It establishes that the movie is going to be kind of a tonal mess.
Yeah.
And so the next segment is The Raft. And I was particularly excited about this.
Yeah.
Specifically because it is based on a short story by King called The Raft, which was published in Skeleton Crew. And before that, it was previously first published as a booklet that was included with Gallery in November 1982. So that's neat. So I had read the story in Skeleton Crew, and I liked it, and I enjoyed it, so I was very curious how it was going to be adapted. And this segment was quite a bit better. I think that, kind of all told, I do think that this is the strongest segment in the movie of the three. I guess. But I do find it interesting because this movie was made in 1987, and this seems more playful than any of the other segments.
Yeah.
And it seems that way. What I love about that is that it is playing up the slasher archetypes of the horny college kids.
Yeah.
That are lambs to the slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that as a piece of kind of pop culture homage, I guess. Yeah, so I don't know. How'd you feel about The Raft? You have not read the short story.
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. But yeah, I liked it okay. I thought it was fun. It had like you were saying, kind of a lot of the horror tropes in it, the horny teenage kids kind of thing. They're smoking joints and stuff.
Yeah.
It's classic, playing their music loud, muscle car. And it also had the like cheap 1950s B movie monster.
Yes.
It's like a fucking tarp they just put in the it's so low budget and ridiculous, but it just kind of works.
It does.
It just
really
works.
Does.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
You know what's funny is I did not make that connection to like cheesy B movie monster, 50s B movie monster,
like the Blob.
Yeah,
right.
And I like the Blob,
right?
And like Creature from the Black Lagoon, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I did not think of that because I kept thinking of it as a very interesting Stephen King-y spin on Jaws. And it's just, it was really kind of interesting and fun for me. Yeah. But it also was still a little too cheesy. Like, it wasn't like Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill cheesy or anything. It was like, okay, character motivations are not really connecting that well cheesy.
Right.
Like, it was really, again, tonally inconsistent and a little bit of a mess in terms of tone.
Right. Yeah, definitely not in keeping with the first movie, but still pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it make you interested in reading the short story?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Because I'd be curious to see King's tone on it. What kind of tone he applies to it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun as a short story, and I really did have fun with the segment in the movie, as much fun as I could.
Yeah, I think it's also the shortest of the three, maybe.
I think so too. Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers are, but
yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I like kind of on a brief tangent, but you mentioned the teenagers and all the tropes of the teenagers and stuff. And like you mentioned the muscle car thing, and that is such a teenager trope. And I don't know where that came from. And I'm in my head, I'm thinking do teenagers now, do they have muscle cars and stuff? Or
I don't know. Probably not. They're probably more into Priuses and shit.
Yeah. I think of the scene from 21 Jump Street.
Yeah. We're talking about the gas mileage of the muscle car. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one kid at our high school had a muscle car.
Yeah.
A Nova.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, just every trope. The one dude is a horny jock kind of guy, but he has the more straight-laced smart friend. I mean, it's just every trope.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It felt like a parody. It felt like Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
It felt like that level of just
a bit of a send up.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I do think that it is, like I said, the strongest segment. Even though the next segment I've had its qualities, but I had some personal, just kind of I don't know. We'll talk about that. But but yeah, this segment was a lot of fun. I thought that the way that I do think that there was a failing in terms of demonstrating how trapped they were. Because for those who are listening to this and haven't watched it, The Raft is about horny teenagers or horny college kids who drive to a small lake and swim out to a raft that's out in the middle of the lake, and they find a demonic oil patch thing monster that sticks to them and kills them and devours them. And so it's kind of like a stranded at sea thing on a very small scale. But what I think was a failing of the segment in terms of the movie and everything and movie making, filmmaking, is I don't think it demonstrated how trapped they were, in that there were moments where I was like, they could maybe make it if they swam.
Right.
At least one of the clearly jock archetype guys could dive in, swim, get to the car and get help, I guess. But, and then there was one section of it that I was like, oh, where did this, what?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, could we save that for spoilers?
Sure.
Okay, we'll save that for spoilers, but it struck me as a little odd. I'll say that.
Right.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts on The Raft? We're kind of breezing through this movie.
Kind of. Well, it's kind of how the movie was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's about it.
Okay. Well, those are our thoughts on The Raft and non-spoilers. Well, we will return to it in spoilers. So the third and final segment of this movie is The Hitchhiker, which was an original story written for the film. And like I said at the start, the kind of the premise or the plot summary, the marketing of this is that, it's based on stories by Stephen King, or Stephen King is responsible for the stories of it, but it's written by George Romero. And so I'm kind of curious how much input King had on The Hitchhiker, because it's a story about a woman who is having an affair and leaves from a tryst to get home before her husband comes home. and sees a hitchhiker, hits a hitchhiker, and then the hitchhiker keeps haunting her on her drive home.
Yeah.
And so I found that the reason why I ask if how much King had input on this is that there's something, as I've been going through, and I've talked about it before, as I've been going through Stephen King's short fiction, I'm seeing so many parallels to the Twilight Zone.
Totally.
Yes. And especially because with Anthology, shout out anthologypod.com, I'm dissecting the Twilight Zone as deeply as I can. And so all of this is really in my head. And there's an episode of the Twilight Zone called The Hitchhiker.
Oh, okay.
Where it is a woman is driving cross country and sees a hitchhiker, does not pick him up, but then he keeps appearing in the road later and later, and seems to be beckoning her toward death. Very good episode. It's in season 1 of the Twilight Zone, but I'm finding so many parallels with Stephen King's work and the Twilight Zone. Not to say that he's ripping off Rod Serling, not by any stretch. He's just heavily influenced by it. And one of the things that I love and adore about it is that King puts his own unique spin on these ideas that, the broad ideas that were kind of previously examined in the Twilight Zone. So I don't know. Maybe there's like a Patreon series that I can do about that. We'll see down the road. But So the Hitchhiker is interesting. How did you feel about this segment in non-spoilers, Mr. Tiny?
I think this is my favorite one.
Nice.
Because it feels very Twilight Zone-y. I think I guess it's not really established what the intentions are of the hitchhiker, why he's stalking, like what his ultimate goal is. I guess that's a little iffy.
I'll actually softly disagree with you.
Okay.
I think he is looking for revenge because his whole thing is like, you killed me.
Right, but he just keeps thanking her for a ride.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what he says.
Yeah. He's like, thanks for the ride, which I think is cool.
Oh yeah.
I kind of liked it, but then he has he's clearly stalking her and like trying to get to her the whole time, but he just keeps saying, thanks for the ride, lady, and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool, actually, but it's
creepy.
I feel like if it was a Twilight Zone episode, the hitchhiker would have just kept showing up, and you don't really know what his intentions are, and he wouldn't be quite so attack focused. But I really like. I kind of love this one. I don't know about love, but I really like the tone of it, and
nice.
I think it's the best, tonally the best one of the three. But also the affair, and I didn't really need it. I mean, especially all the dialogue between those two.
Yeah,
and then she's having this like one-sided conversation towards the beginning where she's like, talking about the damage to the car. And she's like, that's going to cost another $4,000. And
right.
And like, I don't know. I didn't really get that. And it was really laborious and just
it was
dumb. And I don't know why. I think they were just trying to make it a longer segment. Like, because there's only 3 of the damn things in this movie.
Right.
There's a lot of that in all 3 of these segments where I think they're just trying to stretch it out. But yeah, I thought that was all really clunky and didn't work. But once she hits him and kills him, it's really, from there I really enjoyed it and thought it was well done and really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can definitely get on board with that. I agree. It is very, in terms of style, like stylistically, it's interesting. It's where the effects makeup is at its strongest, obviously. And there's some really, really fun and spooky encounters with him. So I did like that. Also, it is the segment that has the King cameo, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And I kind of couldn't divorce myself from the Twilight Zone connection, because the Twilight Zone episode had a very clear ending and very, very satisfying kind of resolution. So I don't know. I shouldn't put that to its detriment or anything, but I will just say that I do agree that the movie does spend way too much time with her And with the affair, it kind of feels like it's maybe paying homage to the beginning of Psycho, maybe a little bit, but also I'm just like, I don't need that. Just give me the horror stuff.
I don't know if I want to give it that much credit.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's something. I don't know. I did think it was I thought it was effective and creepy that he kept asking or saying thank you for the ride and everything.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. That was pretty good. So this was your favorite segment. Any other thoughts on it?
No, I think no, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't really have any other thoughts on it. Before we get into spoilers, what is your Letterboxd rating for this movie?
I think I gave it 2.5 stars, which is a little generous. I'd probably knock that down to 2. The first one, I think I gave it 3.5, but I think I'd actually bump it up to 4.
Yeah.
So the 2-star difference between the two of them.
Yeah. Same here. I gave it 2 stars on Letterboxd. And what is your ranking of the 3 segments?
I liked kind of in reverse order, I think. I think the Hitchhiker was my favorite, followed by The Raft, and then Old Chief Woodenhead.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I would put The Raft up top, and then The Hitchhiker, and then Old Chief Woodenhead on bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, so shall we go into spoilers for Creepshow 2?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to play a clip from the trailer, another clip from the trailer, and then we are going to go into spoilers for Creepshow 2. So check the timestamps if you want to avoid that, or just stop listening, or just keep listening. It's your choice. So here's a clip from the trailer.
What is it?
I don't know.
So don't just sit there.
I'm gonna swim for it right now.
Walk. Run. Swim if you have to.
I got you!
But whatever you do, don't take your time. Because the scares come twice as quickly in
I beat you.
Creepshow 2.
The scares come twice as quickly because it is like half as long. So yeah, spoilers on for Creepshow 2. Tiny, any broad thoughts that you wanted to talk about in spoilers? We don't really need to go segment by segment. We can just kind of freeball it here.
Right. I think the weird you tap danced around the whole basically sexual assault scene
in the raft. Yeah.
Was really out of place.
It really was.
I just don't know what the purpose of it was.
I agree. And I thought it was one of those instances where I was like, did I miss something? Like, did I miss like a crucial like line of dialogue that had this like that made this make sense? Mm-hmm. But I don't think I did. And I think what they were going for and failed miserably at, I think that they wanted to do something. I think that they wanted to pay homage, since this is very much an archetype of like 80s teen slashers and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think what they were trying to do was pay homage to the over-sexualization of those movies. Okay. Like Friday the 13th, like basically the scene or the the rules outlined by Randy Meeks in Scream 1. Like and Scream 2 for that instance, just about sexual content in it. Right. So I kind of feel like maybe they were going for that. Maybe it's supposed to be this campy, cheesy, over the top horror trope thing. Yeah. But also it was again inconsistent with the rest of the segment and with the rest of the movie. It just seemed very just tacked on and weird.
Yeah. And the fact that it was not consensual. Yeah. Like if they had, in the throes of the moment, if she had decided she wanted to have sex with him, and then during the process of them starting to have sex, she gets taken over by the blob thing or whatever, that would have been so much more organic and made so much more sense. But absolutely, just the fact that he's sexually assaulting her. I mean, like he's just feeling her up while she's asleep and getting ready to like make a move on her. That was so weird.
It was very gross.
Obviously,
very gross.
I mean, it was that despite the fact that it's wrong and
Right,
he shouldn't do it and everything, and it probably shouldn't be in the movie because it's like, I don't know, I guess they didn't glorify it or anything,
Right.
but it's just such a strange creative choice.
It really was. And again, I don't want to give too much benefit of the doubt to the filmmakers or to the intention of the movie, but I do think that it's because I think of like Revenge of the Nerds. I don't remember when that came out, but like that has a sexual assault scene in it.
Right.
So I think it's just a sign of the times.
Yeah. I think it was more acceptable back then, I guess.
I guess, but also I don't want to give a pass to it.
It's right.
Yeah.
Still clearly wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that the kind of reveal of her being, stuck to the blob, like her face through the slats.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
that
like
was
that.
effective.
Yeah.
But it was icky. And our woke asses in 2021 aren't going to take it. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to contact the estate of George Romero and start a boycott of all things George Romero. And whatever the director's name was.
Right.
Really. It's,
I think one of the other things we could talk about in spoilers is in the first segment, Old Chief Woodenhead.
Yes.
Just the dude with the long hair, just his attitude was weird.
Yeah, it was
He was so aggressive for no reason.
Absolutely.
Like there's no reason to kill the people.
Right.
And he's ridiculously vain and like, why do you have to rob these people and get a bunch of money to go out to Hollywood and become a famous actor? It doesn't make sense.
It's weird to give him that motivation.
Yeah.
And also it is honestly just poor writing because all I thought was like, okay, well, the only reason that they are harping on this so much is because his death is going to come because of his hair. Like it's like they are laying that on so thick.
Sure.
And it just did not work.
Yeah.
I will say that while that is my least favorite segment and it takes so long to get going and everything, when they kill them, I like that surprised me. That was pretty surprising. I really thought that it was going to be a situation where old Chief Woodenhead comes to life and saves them. But I didn't realize it was going to be a revenge thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
I seriously did love the whole, like it was campy and cheesy, the effects and everything of Chief Woodenhead coming to life, but I was fully on board for it. It was so fun, and I really loved that part, and just how gory it was, and like thankfully he didn't like talk or anything.
Right.
He just like brutally fucking murdered these three dudes, and that was great. But again, like you said, it's like 10% of the segment.
Yeah, like and I feel like the structure of that segment was supposed to be that it was building toward that, because obviously, like, we know as the audience, like, okay, this wooden statue is going to come to life. Like, that's what the end game
wasn't a hard thing to come.
No.
Not a hard conclusion to come to.
Yeah, not at all.
Right.
But they hold it back so much and give us so much just superfluous content.
Yeah.
And I think that the intention is that, like, okay, well, when they do that, when he does come to life, that'll be like the big payoff of that. And it's really just not. It's just like too little, too late. Yeah.
I really think overall the movie needed a fourth segment. It needs, it's too, I feel like they tried to take, in each segment, they tried to just fill in fluff with each one, all the extra stuff in Old Chief Woodenhead and the affair and all that dialogue in The Hitchhiker.
Yeah.
And
sexual assault.
Sexual assault was a bit of a bus stop. But yeah, I feel like with the fourth segment, they could have cut all that crap out and
totally
and it still wouldn't be as good as the first one, and there'd be some tonal issues, but I think it would have improved all three segments, and then we could maybe, hopefully the fourth, whatever story they would have picked would have been good and tight story and fun and some fun campiness, and it would have been a solid second entry.
Yeah.
But I guess just the studio getting involved and being like, no, we don't want to spend the money on a fourth segment, so stretch out these three segments into at least 85 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
It was such a detriment to the movie.
Oh, totally. And like, I feel like, I mean, they could have done that. They could have had a fourth segment and still had that tight runtime. Like that would have been a much tighter movie, still retain the 90-minute runtime, but excise all the superfluous stuff and just use that time for a different segment.
Totally.
Yeah, and it's weird because, like, I mean, I know that you haven't read The Cat from Hell. I read it in Just After Sunset, and I'm very curious how, like, I'm very curious about a lot of things about Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, which we'll review next week, but I'm also curious about how that fits in with that, because I feel like that could have been the fourth segment of this story. Or of this movie, and that would have worked pretty well in terms of the tone, because it is a very bonkers, crazy tone for Cat from Hell.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I just think that would have worked better.
Totally.
Yeah. There was something. No, I don't think anything really for The Hitchhiker. It was fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what else there was to bring up about it.
Yeah. I thought I had something else, but no, I may have been thinking of Old Chief Woodenhead with the murder of the people. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, anything else for spoilers?
Well, the frame story, the kid at the end luring the bullies into the where the meat eating plants were, was cool.
Yeah,
but just it wasn't really an earned payoff.
I agree. Like, why not make? I understand. Like, I did like the implementation of the live action creep. I thought that was cool, and it being Tom Savini is really cool too.
Yeah.
But I mean, make the bullies part of that first opening scene, and make it be make it be the through line for it, so that when you have the Venus flytrap stuff, like that is paying off. Because, like I said, that the bullies don't come in until like halfway through the damn movie. Yeah,
and I understand they had budgetary thoughts because. Animation is a lot cheaper than shooting something live action.
Right.
But I think it would have been fun to see the campiness of them trying to do live action man eating plants. It probably would have been really fun.
Yeah. And have that be the King cameo. Have him reprise his role from the first movie and have that be
totally.
Man, that would have been cool.
Well, Tom Savini making man-eating plants functional, actual, that would have been fun, I think. Who knows, but...
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
It is a shame.
It's a shame how far they fell on the second one.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked out Creepshow 2. So, no parting thoughts, Tiny?
Nah.
Okay. Yeah, same here. So that's our review of Creepshow 2. I can't in good conscience recommend it, but definitely check out Creepshow 1.
Definitely. Really, that's a fun-ass movie.
Oh, yeah. So next week, we've talked about it and everything. Next week, we are not going to be doing Creepshow 3 from 2006, I think, because that movie has nothing to do with Stephen King. And it is apparently pretty much a garbage movie. So instead, we're going to be covering Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, which is a spiritual kind of successor to Creepshow 2. So that is what we're going to be doing next week on the podcast. I believe that Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, is streaming on Cinemax. So check it out there. And yeah, in the meantime, in addition to that, we're also going to be talking about the 2 Stephen King written episodes of Tales from the Dark Side, the series, which unfortunately I don't think that show is streaming anywhere. So we're going to be talking about The Word Processor of the Gods and oh man, what is the other? Sorry, Right Number. Or Sorry, Wrong Number? Sorry, Right Number. No, Sorry, Right Number. Which that's an interesting thing because the teleplay for that is in Skeleton Crew or one of the collections, like the actual teleplay of it. So it's interesting. So cool. Anyway, so that's what we have on the docket for next week on Tower Junkies. Just want to say thank you guys so much for listening to us and everything. And once again, check out Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Tiny.
Yep.
Any thoughts for our dear listeners?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, thank you guys so much for listening. And that is about it. That'll do it for this week's episode of Tower Junkies. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. At any time in your life, have you collected anything?
Oh.
Aside from DVDs and Blu-rays?
Yeah. So when I was a lot younger, I actually collected not baseball cards, but I collected like they were these like Marvel superhero cards. Like I wasn't into comics or anything, but like the daycare that my brother and I went to, we had a friend who's he's same age as our brothers, I think.
Okay.
And he was really into them, and like we were really into like the X-Men animated series and Batman, Spider-Man animated series. We weren't familiar with the comics or anything, but we loved those shows. And then this friend we had, his mom like every week on Friday would buy him a pack of these cards.
Nice.
And he would like showed them to us, and I think it was 5 or 10 cards per pack. I can't remember, but it's a little cellophane wrapper pack of cards.
Sure.
And it was always Marvel or X-Men or Spider-Man or something like that. And so we got into them and we started collecting them too. And we had like the binders, you know, where you put them in the sleeves and stuff. And I probably had a couple hundred of them.
Wow.
And there was, I mean, I was probably between the ages of like 6 and 10 maybe when I was into this. And then I ended up getting rid of them just because I didn't want to hang on to them anymore. But there were like 6 or 8 of them that I held on to because they were like rare and valuable.
Oh, yeah?
And I remember one of them was, it was
1953 Sandy Koufax rookie card.
Yeah, right. No, it was Eddie Brock turning into Carnage for the first time, and like the symbiote like dripping on his arm, and he's like holding it up, and it was like a 3D card, so like there was texture to it and everything. So like the symbiote had like texture on it, and it used some kind of special paint, so it was like it looked kind of metallic-y. It was a coolest fucking card.
Nice.
And I had it till I was like in high school, and I don't remember what I did with it. But
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to towerjunkiespod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/towerjunkiespod and follow us on Twitter at towerjunkiespod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at towerjunkiespod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at tpublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!